Brilliant Minds, Bloody Secrets, a story by Monenna. In the quiet village of Ober-Ilay, where the sun painted the rooftops with golden light and the winds carried whispers through the tall trees, there was a school known for producing the brightest minds in the land, Ikiki Secondary School. The school sat on a hill, its red brick buildings old but strong, surrounded by ancient trees that had been there long before the first chalk touched a blackboard. Every year, students from all over the region begged to be admitted into Ireti. But not just for the good teachers or the clean uniforms. The real magic of Ireti lived in its debate club. People in the village believed that those who joined the club always went on to become governors, judges, and great leaders. They called them the 7 Stars because each year the debate club only had 7 top members, and every single one of them was brilliant and charming and perfect. But none of them ever talked about what happened to the ones who came before. The new school term had just begun when Adaora, a quiet but clever girl from Erunmu, arrived at Ireti. She had always been good with words, and her teachers back home said she had the tongue of a lawyer and the mind of an old woman. When she got the invitation to join Ireti's debate club, her mother danced around their small compound, praising the ancestors. On her first day, Adaora met the others, 6 students who looked like they had walked out of a magazine. Toju, the tall, smooth-talking boy with eyes like a river after rain. Ngozi, whose words felt like honey even when she was insulting you. Chuka, always laughing but never blinking. Kemi, quiet as a shadow but sharp as a blade. If, the girl with long braids and a laugh that made teachers nervous. And Tunde, who smiled too much and never looked tired. They welcomed Adaora like family. At first, the first meeting of the debate club was held in an old classroom that had been locked for years. Or so she thought. Inside, candles burned low, casting shadows on the dusty walls. There was a round table, and each seat had a name carved into it, including hers. They told her it was tradition. "We don't just speak to win," Toju had said. "We speak to control. Words shape reality. If you say something the right way, the world listens. That's what this club teaches." And it was true. The things they could do with words were unnatural. After their first practice debate, the electricity in the school returned after weeks of blackout. After another debate, the school bully got sick and never returned. Adaora started to feel it too, the power in her tongue growing stronger. But one evening, she noticed something strange. In the dusty corner of the room behind the old curtain, she saw a photo, 7 students. But none of them were the ones she knew. She asked about it, but Ngozi laughed and said, "Oh, those were last year's stars. They graduated." But something felt wrong. That night she dreamed of a voice calling her name. The voice was soft, like leaves rubbing against each other. When she turned, she saw a girl with no eyes standing in the school's debate room, whispering, "One must fall, so the rest may rise." Adaora woke up sweating. She started to watch the others more carefully. Tunde always smiled, but he never ate. Ife's hands were always cold. And Chuka. His shadow didn't match his body sometimes. One day, Adaora found an old notebook under the floorboard of the debate room. It was filled with names, dates, and one word repeated over and over, chosen. Each year, one name was circled. The rest were crossed out. The last name circled was Amaka. She didn't see Amaka in school. No one ever spoke of her. That week, the club won a national debate, Their faces were on the news. The principal danced in front of the school gate, but Adara couldn't sleep. That night, she sneaked out to the debate room again. This time she brought palm oil and cola nuts, just like her grandmother had taught her, offerings to ask the spirits for truth. She placed them on the table and whispered, "I want to know what this club really is." The candles blew out by themselves. Then she saw them, faces in the walls, whispering, some angry, some crying. One voice came forward louder than the rest. "It is the price. 1 mind for 6. One voice silenced, so others can speak louder." The next morning, Adara confronted Toju. "What is the price?" she asked. Toju didn't smile this time. He looked at her with tired eyes. "You're smart," he said, "too smart." He walked away. At the next meeting, everything felt colder. The others were quiet. The debate topic was strange. To survive, must one be sacrificed? They all turned to look at her as the candles burned. Later, she overheard Kemi and Ngozi talking near the girls' dorm. "She's too curious," Kemi said. "She might be the one," Ngozi replied. That night, Adaora packed her bag, but when she reached the school gate, it was locked. Not with chains, but with something else. A force, an energy. Her ears rang and she heard whispers again, chanting her name. She ran back to her dorm. In the mirror, her reflection didn't move with her. The next day, she was called to the principal's office. "The ministry is coming," he said. "They want to meet the 7 stars." She nodded slowly, heart thudding. She now understood. The success was real, the fame was real, but the power came with a curse. The club didn't just win debates, it fed on them. On one of them. Now she had to make a choice. Fight the system from within, or find a way to break it before she was chosen. And as she sat in the debate room that evening, with her voice echoing against the walls, she knew this story was far from over, because the shadows were listening, and they were hungry again. The next few days passed like smoke, thick, confusing, and hard to breathe through. Adara felt like she was walking through someone else's dream. The school was still the same. Students laughing, teachers shouting, the cook in the dining hall pounding yam. But underneath it all, something had shifted. Every time she walked past the other debate club members, they smiled. But it was not the kind of smile that comforted you. It was the kind that watched, like the eyes of a lizard on a wall, waiting for a fly to land. She started to avoid them. But the school was small, too small. They were always around, watching, whispering, preparing. One evening she saw Ngozi near the chapel, alone. Adaora thought it was a chance. She followed her quietly, but when she got closer, she saw Ngozi kneeling in front of the altar, whispering words that Adaora did not understand. Her voice didn't sound like hers. It was deeper, older. Then Ngozi turned around. Her eyes were rolled back. She smiled. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Adaora ran. Back in her room, she locked the door and sat on the floor. She pulled out the old notebook she had found. She turned the pages again. The handwriting was neat, careful, names written with love, until the moment one was circled. She found something new this time. At the back, a short note written in tiny letters. They choose the weakest link. But if the circle is broken, the pact fails. What did it mean? She didn't sleep that night. Her dreams were full of running feet, crying voices, and fire licking the walls of the debate room. The spirits were restless. One of them kept calling her name over and over again. Adaora, Adaora. By morning she had made a decision. She was going to find Amaka, the last girl whose name was circled. She had to know what really happened. But Amaka was gone. The teachers said she graduated. The students said she transferred. The security man at the gate said she just stopped coming. Only the old janitor, Babakola, said something useful. She come here like you, smart, brave, too curious. One day she follow them for the final debate. She no return. Adaora's chest felt heavy. What happened to her? Babakola looked around, then leaned close. I saw them carry her. That night. They wear white cloth, no talk. Just sing. Carry candle. Her mouth was covered. She was crying. Adora's hands were shaking. Where did they take her? He pointed behind the school toward the abandoned hostel. No go there, girl. The ground no sleep well. But she had to. That night, when everyone was sleeping, she crept out with a torch and a piece of charcoal in her pocket. Her grandmother once told her that charcoal carried the memory of fire. And fire never forgot the truth. The abandoned hostel was cold and silent. The doors were broken, cobwebs hung from the ceiling like torn clothes. She moved slowly, her torchlight dancing across the floor. Then she saw it, a circle, drawn on the ground with white chalk. In the centre, a candle had melted into the floor, wax thick like blood. Around it were 7 stones. One was broken. She stepped into the room. The air felt heavier, like something was watching. Then she heard it and the sound of crying. She followed it down the hall to a locked door. She knocked once. Hello? No answer. Then the crying stopped. The door creaked open on its own. Inside was a small room. No bed, no window, just writing all over the walls, over and over. I was the 7th. I was the price. Let me out. Adara turned around, but the door slammed shut. She screamed, she hit the door. Then she heard something behind her, a soft rustle like fabric dragging. She turned slowly. A girl stood there, her face pale, her eyes empty, her mouth stitched shut. Amaka. She reached out her hand to Adaora, and for a moment Adaora wanted to take it, but something stopped her. The charcoal in her pocket began to burn. She pulled it out. It was glowing. She threw it on the ground, and the room shook. A crack opened in the floor and the spirits wailed. Amaka screamed, not in pain but in anger. They left me, she cried, her voice suddenly clear. They chose me. Adaora backed away. Then she spoke. I won't be the next. The fire from the charcoal spread across the floor, burning the words on the walls. Amaka faded into smoke. The door opened. She ran. Back in her dorm, she found something on her bed, a small piece of paper. Tonight is the choosing. Be ready. Her heart dropped. She had only one option now, crash the ceremony and break the circle. But the questions still burned in her mind. Who would they choose? And was it already too late? That entire day the sun refused to shine properly. The sky was grey, thick with clouds that looked like heavy thoughts. Even the birds that usually sang near the mango trees were silent. It was as if the whole of Ikiki Secondary School knew something dark was coming. Adaora walked through the day like she was underwater. Her classmates were smiling, chatting, laughing. But none of it felt real. The world was tilted now, and nothing sat where it used to. She kept checking her pockets, making sure the black charcoal stone was still there. The one that burned in Amaka's prison and helped her escape. It had cooled now, but Adaora believed it still held something. Power, memory, protection. The members of the debate club were quieter than usual. They no longer tried to charm her. They no longer smiled with their eyes. At lunch, they all sat together under the big almond tree, speaking in low voices. When she passed by, Ife's eyes followed her like a hawk. Later, in the school corridor, Tunde caught up with her. "You should rest this evening," he said softly. "You'll need your strength." Adaora didn't reply. She kept walking. He didn't stop her. That night, just after midnight, the drums began. She had never heard them before. Low, deep drums that seemed to come from the belly of the earth. They weren't played by hands. They weren't made of wood or skin. These drums were older. She got up, dressed in her school uniform, and tied a piece of red cloth around her waist. Something her mother once said was good for courage. In her pocket, she placed the charcoal stone, a piece of bitter cola, and a cowrie shell. When she stepped out, the school grounds were empty, but the drums kept calling. She followed the sound past the dorms, past the assembly ground, past the sports field, all the way to the back of the school compound where the old headmaster's house stood, crumbling and swallowed by weeds. No one ever went there. Except tonight. The house was glowing. Faint golden light poured through the windows. She crept closer and saw them, the other 6, dressed in white. Toju stood at the center holding a long black feather. Around them was a circle drawn with white chalk and crushed bone. In the middle of the circle stood a chair, empty, waiting. Adaora stepped back, but her foot snapped a twig. They turned. "She's here," Chuka said, voice calm. Ngozi opened the door wider. "You're just in time." Adaora walked forward, slowly. Every instinct in her body told her to run, but another voice, quieter, older, told her to watch. "Is this where you choose?" she asked, standing just outside the circle. Toju nodded. "We don't choose. The Pact does." "What if I say no?" Toju looked at her, truly looked, as if seeing her for the first time. "Then all of us fail, and the Pact takes all 7. Adaora's heart beat faster. "We've all made sacrifices," Ngozi added. "That's why we're brilliant, that's why we win. One must fall, so the rest may rise." Adaora stepped closer. "Then what happened to Amaka?" Silence. "She was chosen," Ife said coldly. "Just like one of us will be tonight." Adaora looked at the chair. Then she looked at them, at their perfect faces, their calm eyes. They were ready to do it again. They weren't scared, but she was. "Sit, Adaora," Toju said. "Let the Pact choose." She shook her head. "I didn't come to sit." She pulled out the charcoal stone. Toju's smile vanished. "You brought the fire," he said quietly. "Yes," she replied. "I see now," Kemi whispered. "She doesn't want to break the circle. She wants to end it." Adaora stepped into the circle. The ground hummed. The chalk began to glow. The drums grew louder. She threw the charcoal stone into the center. It burst into flame. The circle shook. The light turned red. A wind blew through the room, lifting papers and dust. "No!" Ngozi shouted. "You don't understand." But it was too late. The fire formed into a figure. A woman made of ash and smoke. Her mouth was full of voices. She looked at each of them. "One of you must fall. But she who burns the Pact becomes its heir." Adaora froze. "What do you mean?" "You took the stone," the spirit said. "You opened the prison. You broke the balance." The other club members backed away, their faces pale. Adaora suddenly felt something crawl into her chest. A heat. A weight. She screamed. The light exploded. When the smoke cleared, she was lying on the floor, alone. The house was dark. The others were gone. She got up slowly. The chalk circle was broken, the air was still, the drums had stopped. But something had changed. Inside her she felt a new voice. It whispered softly, not evil but not kind either, just hungry. She walked out of the house and back to the dorm. Everyone was asleep, the night peaceful again. But as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she heard one final whisper. You ended their pact. Now build your own. The next morning came too quickly. The sun was out again, but it brought no warmth. Adara sat on her bed, staring at her hands. They looked the same, soft, brown, the small scar on her thumb from when she cut yam back in Erunmu. But something inside her had changed. She could feel it now, like a second heartbeat, quiet, watching. The other members of the debate club were gone. No one spoke about them. When she went to class, their seats were empty. The teachers didn't ask. The students didn't notice. It was as if Toju, Ngozi, Chuka, Ife, Kemi, and Tunde had never existed. Adara sat alone in the clubroom now. The old classroom was cold and dusty again. The candles were gone. The chalk circle had been washed away by the rain, but her name was still carved into the chair. She was the last one. No, not just the last. She was the only one. That night, she had dreams again. Not of spirits or fire, but of words, hundreds of them written across the sky. Some in English, some in Igbo, some in languages she had never learned. But somehow she understood them all. And they all pointed to the same thing, power. The next day, something strange happened.